See, now I feel like we should have some music as people come in. So I'm going to play a classic that I feel. There you go. There you go. Joe's connecting right now. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so as people are coming in and getting situated, I wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you for all of the panelists, all the attendees that have taken time out of their busy schedule to join us today. Working at Percent Pledge, our focus is building a community circled around social impact and wanting to do good. So I know I mean it from the heart when I say that. Thank you for making the time to be here. And at the end of this webinar, I want to make sure that you all can provide feedback and walk away with some tangible, amazing, actionable keynotes and nuggets of wisdom. So we have the amazing Pamela, or Pam. We have Lori here as well. We have Dan. And then moderating today, we'll have Joel and myself. So I hope you all have a good time. And yeah, and whenever you're ready, like Joel, feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Prince. And yeah, let me start by echoing what you mentioned, and a big thank you and show of gratitude to our amazing panelists, as well as everyone who joined us today for this really awesome conversation. I know I'm biased, of course, but it will be awesome. And I think let's just dive right in. So I'm going to start off. Just passing it over to Dan, our first panelist from Learn to Scale, and then Dan, if you can pass it to Lori, and Lori will pass it on to Pamela after that to just give a brief intro on. Tell us a bit about who you are, what you do at your organization, and we were talking about some icebreakers, and given I'm melting in Brooklyn summer heat at the moment, so to put me in a positive mind frame. Also, please share with everyone one of your most fond summer memories.
Oh. That's a layup. Thanks, Joel. I mean, I'm excited to be here, excited to chat with the panelists and also kind of share my experience and my stories with all of you. And yes, I'm Dan. I am the founder and chief learning whisperer of Learn to Scale. It's a company I founded, so I get to call myself whatever I want. And what I do is I help professionals find a way to have more of an impact on their organization's culture and their own careers. And I work primarily with HR and what I like to call HR curious professionals. And I do coaching, I do contract work, I do advising, strategic work. And I'm excited to talk a little about social impact because it's actually really close to my heart. It was what got me started in my professional career. So we'll talk more about that. And favorite summertime activity? Well, how did you know? I love summer camp. I'm such a summer camp nerd. And I went to piano camp, I went to band camp, I went to arts camp, I went to archaeology camp. I was very much a camper. And I'm channeling that camp experience because I'm running a program for Learn to Scale in 2 weeks called Camp Career Confidence, around career confidence in summer camp. So I get to recapture that camp counselor feeling. So I love being in summer camp. All right. Yeah. So Lori, hey, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Misenhimer. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am the Senior CSR Operations Manager at Alteryx, and I am currently located in Colorado. Alteryx is a data analytics company that automates and optimizes business outcomes. And in my current role here, I lead our free licensing program, which we call Tech for Good, our global volunteer efforts, our strategic grants program, and build out processes and operations for our CSR team so we can effectively do our job. This year, our CSR team has committed to a company goal of 80% of our employees logging 20 hours of volunteer time off. And then we partnered with Pledge 1% to donate 1% of our product to nonprofits that are working to bring positive breakthroughs and change to their communities, the planet, and issues that align with our values. So I have a master's degree in organizational development and organizational leadership, which is why I'm so thrilled to be on this panel discussing two of my favorite topics, which are culture and social impact. And my favorite summertime memory would have to be going to the lake. So I grew up in Oklahoma, and there's not much in Oklahoma, but there is a lake. So every summer my family would go and spend the summer at the lake. We would fish, do picnics, and go on a boat. And it's always very special to me to think back on. And with that, I will pass it to Pam.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everyone. My name is Pam. I am currently the Senior Learning and Development Program Manager at Betterment. Betterment is a smart money manager based in New York. And for me, like everyone else in this room and the other panelists, social impact and culture has just always been a passion of mine. And that's how I actually started at Betterment. I started on their engagement team. Betterment has an amazing company culture where they really embrace employees bringing in their interests and creating space for people to share that with one another. So I was able to bring in my passion for social impact. And even though I'm no longer in the engagement team, I'm still part of the people team as a learning and development manager, and I'm able to still participate in helping to build that part of our culture. And it's just been really exciting as we've partnered with Percent Pledge over the past 6 months now to be able to formalize it a little bit more. So I'm excited to be here and to be able to share with you all the great stuff that we've been doing and to also learn from the other panelists as well. And in terms of my favorite summer memory, mine's quite simple. It was pretty much a summer that I had in college where I didn't really have an agenda. I didn't really have any plans, but just having that open space and that freedom just allowed for more spontaneity. So during that summer, my friends and I would go on like long drives just out of nowhere. We would go camping in people's backyards, and yeah, just having that freedom and no agenda was really exciting and really just very rejuvenating and freeing to just do whatever you want, whenever you feel like it. So that was my favorite memory.
That's hot girl summer embodied right there. And Joel's living city boy summer over there in New York, burning up.
I am very much so, and thank you all for sharing a bit more background on each of you, why you're here and joining us for this conversation, and I think we can kind of dive into the meat of things, and so Dan, I'm gonna bring it back to you to start off with some of our questions and get the conversation going, and I think firstly as well, we'll have to talk at some point about you going to both band camp and piano camp and what order those happened and how specialized you got with that. But to bring us back to this conversation, I want to start off just asking you, we've recently seen this really incredible kind of beautiful wave of social impact programs and culture and employee engagement really cementing itself as a need to have in companies versus nice to have, and every day now more and more companies are putting social impact and or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs or both in their in their budgets and strategy plans and Sharpie versus pencil back in the day. And so I guess my first question to you is just as the employee engagement expert, why do companies now view social impact programs as such a necessary part of their company experience and culture and mission? And what do you think are some of the causes for this, welcomed and positive shift?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. And I know as like the first panelist who gets to answer a question, I want to give everyone kind of like one thing they can walk back to their bosses or their managers saying like, I went to this panel and they said this stuff. Here's like a little hot take is that if you don't have social impact programs at your organization, you are leaving it up to chance that you'll recruit and retain the highest performing talent in the marketplace. Okay, that's my hot take. Now let's walk that back and explain why. So I work a lot with organizations that are fast growing. I work with HR professionals. I work with executives to try and help them build a talent pipeline and figure out how are they going to be successful as a company using culture as a major driver. And in today's job market, post-COVID, hot girl summer, whatever you want to call it, I call it the summer of leave. Employees really have a lot of choice, and it's a spicy job market. And if your organization is not addressing social impact, the people who look for organizations, the people who are motivated, the people who want to stick it out, who are going to persevere, they're the ones who are looking for an organization to have this as part of their core mission, values, and operations, frankly. I've been on a big kick on mastery, autonomy, and purpose lately. And for the learning people on the panel, you're like, oh yeah, mastery, autonomy, purpose. Yeah. But if you've never heard of it, go to the library or use your library app and go read Drive by Dan Pink. It's very crushable. It's a great summer read. It came out in 2009, talks about mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And these are 3 different factors that drive intrinsic motivation and engagement. Mastery being, going from no skill to skill, autonomy having choice, or at least the perception of choice and agency in what you do, and then purpose that, there's a bigger reason why you're doing something. It's something intrinsic that motivates you. Organizations try to capture on purpose with mission and values, but social impact connects it to real world results. Having a social impact program, having social impact opportunities, having an opinion on how your organization is part of a larger corporate community, those are the things that's going to have somebody actually persevere to 5 p.m. on a Friday, or come in on a rainy day to do that volunteer event later in the day. Like, those are the things that's going to drive employee engagement on a very practical operational level. So if you're not thinking about it, you're just leaving good talent up to chance.
Yeah, that I thank you for starting with the hot take. And as well, one thing you mentioned on that intrinsic piece is another kind of key shift here that I think if I can find it, I'll post it. But a study I had found recently that's been a big shift too. Is before, in the old days, extrinsic motivation, your pay, your comp, those sorts of things were the main drivers. And with today's talent, that's shifted. And so many of these, whether it's cultural employee engagement, social impact programs that are the kind of the intrinsic ones within an organization, that's really what is driving people, to join your mission, to stay there, to tell their friends about it. So that is terrific. Thank you. And we'll drop a link to Drive as well. I've read it. It was indeed crushable. Prince, what do you got next?
I just love how Dan came in. It's like spitting fire right off the heat, like right off the bat. I was here for it. I love that.
I had a real good workout this morning, and I've been living off that high all day.
Well, I'm actually going to ask both Pam and Lori separately, just like, how has the social impact program impacted your company's missions, your company's values, and what is the culture like now? How's that experience been since you've implemented like your social impact program? Because a lot of companies have one, but they don't necessarily know how to utilize it to retain like high talent or get that high engagement that they want. So if you want, Lori, you can lead with this one.
Yeah, sure. When the world shut down in 2020, organizations across the globe had to be agile. They had to pivot really quickly. And there was all of a sudden no physical barrier between work life and home life. So not only was there a pandemic that was going on last year, but there was an incredible amount of racial injustice going on as well. In the midst of all of these massive changes at Alteryx, our CEO and co-founder actually stepped down. So we had a change in leadership as well. So as you can imagine, one of these instances alone could cause a major culture shift, but combining them all really brought us to this critical moment and an important moment in our culture. And I bring this up because in the past at Alteryx, our CEO really determined the culture. He was the founder, he was the CEO for 20 years, and it's all employees really knew. But with this change in leadership, for the first time, the ball was in the court of the employees. And so now employees were in charge of culture. So this is when we started hearing employees speak up for the first time about the racial injustice that was happening across the globe with the murder of George Floyd, the hate crimes against our AAPI community that were happening. This is also when employees took it upon themselves to create and circulate an anti-racism petition. They got together to raise funds to address food insecurities. They sewed masks together, they wrote letters, and they formed a DEI committee. This is also when we had employee resource groups form, and the employees taught our CEO through their actions how they expected him to lead with social impact at the core of everything we do as a company. So employees were starting to speak out and our CEO listened. So we started to see this intersection of a new shift of power coming directly from our social impact work because he recognized the importance of the best thing that we can do as a company really is to make sure that our employees feel comfortable showing up as their authentic selves, because we know that when they do that, they achieve their best work. So with that, our social impact team launched listening circles, which was brand new to our culture. These listening circles had no agenda. They were just a space for employees to process all of the big changes, both personally and professionally, that were happening. And through these listening circles, we saw employees on both sides of the political spectrum have respectful and challenging conversations. We had people open up about their personal mental health struggles. We had an employee come out for the first time, and we had employees listening and learning. And through these listening circles, we had 100% executive staff participation. And in fact, most executives ended up coming to multiple listening circles. So all of our social impact work really led us to adding on a brand new core value at Alteryx, which is equality. And so through that, we proudly declare that we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in a culture to where everyone feels welcome. So a few key takeaways or hot takes, as Dan likes to say, is number one, host space for your employees to process change. Whether it be socially, professionally, or personally, we found at Alteryx that nothing brings together employees like storytelling. The second one is look at your core values. Is social impact work reflected in those? Are they inclusive to your entire workforce, or do they demonstrate your commitment to your community? And the last one is really listen to your employees like we did, and they will guide your social impact initiatives for you.
Yes, yes. So many wonderful things you just said there. And it really is like, if I think I read an article the other day that mentioned if you want to really make a change, you have to start at the top. You can't put all the work onto the employees and then say, well, you guys got to figure it out and then come back to us. It's if you have C-suite buy-in, then that's what's going to really make the largest change. And Pamela, feel free to jump in when you're ready.
Awesome. That was really great and encouraging to hear, Laurie. I would say for Betterment, our company has always had an underlying value in social impact, and that was kind of how Betterment started. It's in our mission, it's in our product. We have a charitable giving feature on our product and SRI portfolio, and also in our employee culture. Mainly for our employee culture, I would say it's always been employee-led, where the company always provided space. And as I mentioned in my intro, it was a place where everyone could bring in their full selves, everyone could share their interests with one another. It wasn't like only bring up your work stuff at work and then any of your interests keep at home, but it was very much like a place where everyone was embraced for their diverse interests and personalities and identities. So in the past, our social impact initiatives really started out small, where they were very like grassroots and had ad hoc, in which our employees would kind of just self-organize, put out on Slack, hey, I'm volunteering at this place, whoever wants to join, like throw up an emoji and I'll send out a calendar invite, or just sharing donation opportunities. So the culture then was more so of Betterment creating a space for people who are interested to be able to voice that. But over the past year and all the things that have gone through in society, as Lori has mentioned, we realized that social impact really needs to be something that's more formalized and a defining part of our collective company culture, and not just a space for people to voice it, but actually do something and take action with what people were raising and the concerns and issues people were really passionate about to make change. So I think having a formal social impact program really allowed us to do that, to really bring our value to the forefront, make it more tangible, make it an actual commitment that the company is making, not through just our words, but through actions and through results. And it now has become more of a defining part of who our company is, what it means to be part of Betterment, what it means to be part of be an employee here. And it has now become more of a cultural initiative that is felt throughout the whole company, that the leaders get behind, that our CEO gets behind, and it's involved in every aspect. So from large initiatives like hosting a company-wide volunteer week to everyday little company occurrences like reimbursing meals ordered from small businesses, or partnering with office vendors that also have a social impact component, to even like hosting different events where we donate like $10 for every person that attends. So just finding little ways where we can make a large impact, and also thinking like you don't have to do these like huge events, but every little step and every little initiative counts. Really does make a long way and really does help with the identity and culture of the company. And I will say much of our social impact programs are still very much employee-led, and that's, I think, what contributes to the success of our program. But now we found, especially in the past year, that this has become our main outlet and our main pillar for employee engagement, and what really gets people motivated and connected throughout the company.
Hey, can you actually tell us a little bit more about the volunteer week that you all put together? I know we partnered with you all on that, and I heard through the grapevine it was a great experience, but I haven't actually heard firsthand from you. What was the week like? What did employees say? What were the results? So this would be great to just hear for me and everyone listening, of course.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. So we ran a volunteer week at the end of January of this year. So this was still during the time of the pandemic. We were all working from home. And to be honest, like it was hard for our company to transition into this work from home office, and really finding ways to engage our company. As I mentioned before, we're really a community-based, employee-based culture, and it was really hard to see what that would look like in the virtual space. So we decided to run this volunteer week, and that's where we partnered with Percent Pledge. And Percent Pledge really curated 5 different volunteer projects, which employees could sign up for based on their interest and based on their time. And these volunteer projects range in causes from diversity, equity, inclusion to financial literacy, humanitarian aid to tech education. And they also varied in time. So you could either be in a project that was 1 hour to 4 hours, or some of the projects were even just kind of drop in when you have time, as long as you can type of projects. And then also level of involvement. So it might be just mapping out disaster zones in Asia, to mentoring students or building curriculum for a financial literacy course. And this was all done virtually. So we decided to launch this to the whole company. We had our CEO also advertise it and encourage people to get involved. We told people managers to really prioritize this event and help to create time in people's schedules to participate in this. And I think that was really important, because you can design a program, you can have all these events, people can talk about it, but if you don't actually create space for people to do it, then it's kind of counterproductive, and it's like, what's the point? So really making sure that it was part of our culture and people had dedicated time to do it. And leaders said, it's okay, we want you to be part of this. So I think that really contributed to the success of the program as well. So this week launched, we got great participation. People signed up for different projects that they were interested in. And we found that the feedback was just far more than what we expected. We thought it would just be like, okay, great, that was fun, and move on. But it really did, I think, shape what our culture is now and what it is going to be for the future. So 3 main ways that it really impacted us. through volunteering was one on the individual level. So it just allowed employees to engage in work that's outside of their everyday job title. So I know that especially with the transition to working from home, it's really hard to block off like 8 hours of your day and have a separation of like work and life. And after a long day of being on Zoom, the last thing you want to do is be in another planned program and on Zoom again with your coworkers. But by setting aside time during the day, it really allowed people to step away from work while at work and engage in just something different and use a different part of their brain and emotions and tap into a different part of them. So Percent Pledge really did an awesome job in being intentional with the types of volunteer projects that we had and really matching them to our employee skills, interests, and expertise. So this allowed employees to use a lot of their skills and experiences, but just in a different context and one that actually had immediate impact and helped other people. So this was really motivating and like really exciting for people to do this, and just gave them something different to do. And a lot of people, yeah, they felt that it was very fulfilling. They were really engaged. A lot of them expressed that how happy they were and grateful for a company that actually valued social impact and like created space for them to engage in it. And as I mentioned before, it was just really even more so impactful during the pandemic as we were also like tackling, issues of burnout and lack of motivation. So this helped kind of jumpstart and bring something fresh and new for the employees. The second way that it really impacted us was just on a collective company level. As I mentioned, we were a very community focused relationship building company, and just being all at home felt really isolating and was really hard to bring people together. So by having this volunteer event, it brought in people from various levels, all different departments, all different teams coming together for a shared purpose and goal. And these are just people that, like, I met a lot of new people that I don't get to interact with on an everyday. So just being able to build that community and meeting other people really did strengthen our company culture and strengthen the relationships within our organization. And then third was just on the impact level. Most importantly was volunteering is just a great tangible way of getting involved, but we found that it was a very educational experience and learning opportunity for people. So as they engaged in these one-time volunteering projects, they realized that, okay, what we're engaging in is really part of a much larger like social impact or social issue. So whether it's within education, people were actually, this introduced them to challenges within education, to certain minority groups, and got people really curious and kind of sparked an appetite for learning and engaging in social issues at a much deeper level than just, collecting food, donating money, but really understanding what's happening in our world, where does this stem from, and really motivating people to advocate and get involved at a much more impactful level. So from this volunteer event, we've now hosted a bunch of guest speakers. We've, similar to what Lori was doing with holding conversation and space to engage in difficult conversations, holding space for discussion around what's going on in society. And we found that all of our, our ERSGs, our employee resource groups, also started leveraging Percent Pledge and also started leveraging the social impact component to a lot of their initiatives. And that's really, as I mentioned before, become the pillar of our employee engagement and what's really brought us all together as a company, especially during the pandemic and remote life that we're all experiencing.
I love that. And that's wonderful to hear, because I think I just started when you all started the volunteer week. So that was great to hear. My favorite two things that you mentioned, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't really think about. It's making sure there's time allotted for your employees to do these events. And it's not time during their personal time, but during the day when they're already at work. And the second thing is something I mentioned during Pride Month, is merging education with experience. And reason being, you can read as much as you want, but you would never understand what it's like unless you're living the experience. So once you have that education, now are you going to then go out and have those life experiences to really understand what it's like for the other person? So Joel, do you have any other questions you want to jump in with?
Yeah, absolutely. And and actually I'll copy you as well, because I was taking some notes as Pam was talking. The two things that had stuck out to me, one of which you mentioned on that connection to the Betterment ESRGs, and that's something that we see a lot of now, and even for folks on the call, just from a kind of really actionable and simple standpoint there, with so many of our customers now, it's part helping each of their employee resource groups form a local nonprofit partnership, and even just that kind of there's kind of vetting that goes through and wanting to make sure that you're working with an organization that that really is a great fit for that community within your company. But it's a pretty low lift process, and it's something that everyone can do to then, it immediately gives, whether it's volunteering or donating, it gives everyone else in the organization, right, who wants to be an ally, wants to support that that community, that resource group, with a really tangible, actionable way to do so. And so just something that I wanted to mention that has worked amazingly at Betterment, but elsewhere as well, and is something that folks could do right away. And then similarly, with what you mentioned, Pam, on the connection, and Lori too, of how the workday was just every second now that people didn't have to commute. It's all right, well, once you open your eyes in the morning, we expect you to be online, and that personal life, work life blending. I remember on the last day of Betterment's Volunteer Week, we had done a hackathon, and it was about 30 or 40 cross-functional team members from Betterment that came together, and they built out an entire website and student resource portal for Build NYC in that time frame, which is the fastest hackathon we've ever done. But I remember Andrew, I believe is one of your directors of engineering, was live on the Zoom working with teammates the entire time. And for the first hour, we all thought he was wearing a fanny pack or a satchel, and then realized that he was holding his newborn baby while he was doing this hackathon for 4 hours. And it somehow, I think it was just serendipity, the baby didn't cry a single point. It was just so happy with the work that was being done. But anyways, so that I wanted it. Your comments made me remember that. And so the last kind of question that I think we wanted to ask, and Lori, I'll start with you if that's okay, and then maybe open it up to the rest of the panelists, is talking about strategies and ways that we can impart some knowledge on all of the attendees and registrants here, that they can use to go back to their companies and put in action right away. So so many of the companies here today are either starting programs from scratch, or have something in place, and whether it's kind of enhancing DIY, CSR, as we call it, corporate social responsibility, or something that's kind of truly employee led, but wanting to formalize it a bit more. What advice or strategies would you impart on companies that want to either kind of build their first social impact program, or take maybe a few ad hoc pieces that are in place now to put some formalization over it? What were the first steps that you took?
Yeah, I was trying to think some quick takeaways for you all. And so I came up with 4 key strategies that will help you all create an effective social impact program, and I'll walk quickly through those. So the first one is to tie your social impact to your company's business goals. So social impact, or CSR, should not be a sidearm. It should be the core of the company. So be a part of the core company accelerating with social impact. It creates more social impact, which will then drive business impact. So do that by having leaders tie your social impact initiatives directly to the business goals. So not only your team is actively working towards those goals, but the entire organization is able to measure on adoption and implementation. The second one I would say is operationalizing your social impact across the organization, which kind of ties on to the first one. At Alteryx, we have 6 strategic imperatives, and 2 of those are directly tied to social impact, which has allowed us to operationalize our efforts across the organization, which has then allowed us to be proactive in our efforts instead of reactive. So our social impact team proactively meets with the marketing team, the PR team, with the internal comms team, product, facilities, etc., to be social impact ambassadors in their respective departments. And so we share our goals with them and make sure that in their QBRs, they're also driving our efforts. The third one, and Dan talked about this earlier, is creating a shared sense of purpose. So I recently read an article on Gartner around the new employment deal where it talked about the importance of organizations driving and going beyond corporate messages to real behaviors, and how now leaders must effectively get involved with the societal and cultural debates of the day. So through this research, it said that only issuing a corporate statement, it actually degrades employee engagement versus the status quo of doing nothing at all. So in organizations who put actions behind their words, they do this by allocating resources, changing suppliers, and giving employees time to volunteer. It actually increases their engagement by up to 60%. So it's really, really important to make sure to create this shared sense of purpose in the culture of your organization. And the final one is to trust yourself and own that you are the social impact subject matter expert. Most executives might have a traditional view of what corporate social responsibility is. They might have a model in mind from their business school, and they likely aren't as innovative or effective as what you want to accomplish. So really trust yourself and be confident in suggesting different things that the exec team told you. This is why they hired you. You bring an expertise that they do not have. Help them do things that they cannot imagine. So listen to what they truly want and what they're asking for, but uncover why it's important. You can say that you agree with the end goal and you understand this is the business goals that they want to drive, but maybe recommend an approach and a tactic and a guide in a more effective way.
And I wish I had a mic so I could give to you for that mic drop you just gave us. So those are awesome. Dan, you have to follow up now.
And here's the mic.
There you go.
Dan, can you please after drop your mic in honor of Lori?
Oh yeah.
There we go. All right. So I loved everything that Lori said, and part of me just loves the idea of social impact because it's so aspirational, it's comprehensive, it's inclusive, and there's also a dark side to this, is that it's scary, it's intimidating. You feel like there could be ways of doing it wrong. And I think, if that's some of the feelings that's conjured up of social impact is a scary, I don't know how to get started, I would recommend really thinking about it as a product and a product of your culture, and approach it in the same way that your product team would approach a business problem and say, what is the gap? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? What's the vision of what we want to achieve? And let's make a small incremental improvement. Doesn't need to be massive. It can be a start. It may not even be your full-time job to tackle CSR, but you can certainly get a small group together of people and say, how can we put together a program that aligns with a vision of being part of a broader community? That's like a big question, but get some pizza, put it together and see what you come up with and try it. And I'm a huge fan of approaching culture initiatives in an agile mindset versus a waterfall mindset, and saying, like, let's just see how it goes and learn from it. And from there, it'll pick up some momentum and steam. And if we approach this in a really inclusive way and bring people into the conversation and listen and collect feedback, because that's what product people do, they collect feedback from their customers, and you include that and you iterate and you improve, you're going to find you're have a great social impact program faster than if you just hoped it was just a big old ugly project. So
that is I love that, and I think too the what you were mentioning about there's no wrong way to do this, that these are inherently programs that are one of ones for each company, right? the same way that if these are supposed to be tied to your
Mhm.
mission and values, and every company would probably say, yes, our mission is unique, then by default, your social impact program should be unique. The way that
Absolutely.
you're engaging with your employees should be unique, and the impact that you're making together. And so I love that. Yeah, and I think maybe not doing anything is perhaps the only way that you could get it wrong is just
Yeah,
start
it's
it.
really, if you let yourself be governed by fear of getting started,
You'll never
you don't have
start.
an opportunity to truly achieve something important. And your culture is your company's true competitive difference. So do you want to build a feature to your competitive difference? Get a group together, order some pizza, and see, how do we put together a program around social impact?
Yeah.
And I love that last line that you said. Your culture is basically your biggest competitive difference, because I think back to a couple of companies I've worked with, and they had nothing in place. And what they said, they had culture when I interviewed with them. And that's one question I always ask when I interview. It's like, so what is the culture like? And when you join a job that says the culture is great, and then you're working at the job and you realize that the culture isn't really what it was sold as, then you have no ties. It's so easy to leave. And you don't want that, because each time somebody leaves, I think everyone listening knows that it's super expensive. Like each employee that quits, that's like at least 10K gone. And so when you're preaching a strong culture, you got to make sure that you're delivering, and that the culture is actually touching on each different employee, each of their backgrounds, each of like the things that make your company unique and different is your employees. So yeah, and Pam, go for it. This is your moment.
I feel like Lori and Dan did just such an amazing job. That mic drop for both of them. So I would say, I just like kind of reiterating what both of them had said, and like really tying it to your company goals and company values, and really, don't be afraid to just get started and just see what comes out. And I think that's kind of how our social impact program started at Betterment, and it's still fairly new and something that is still continuing to evolve and still continuing to build, and hopefully it will continue to change as the years come along. But kind of what we had mentioned earlier as well with companies is we're just like in a very unique transitional period for the future of work in general, where the landscape has just become a lot more competitive for good talent, and now employees have the upper hand in being able to choose what company really speaks to them, which ones align to their values and to their interests. And a lot of our society now and our employee base do really care about social impact. And this is a core of who they are and part of their identity and what they look for in jobs. So it really is a really important part of the company's performance, and a lot of leaders are starting to recognize that. So I think that's something really exciting to really leverage and take hold of now, to really start building and advocating for a social impact program if your company doesn't have it already. And for Betterment, we don't have a specific department dedicated to CSR or social impact. We hope to one day, but a lot of it still is very much employee-led. And being able to, I would say, an advice would be really to just listen and like observe what's happening with your employees. For us, we found that, addressing social issues and engaging in social impact was something that was already going on, that there was buzz around, people were self-mobilizing. So we were able to just identify that, really hone in on that, and really identify champions, social impact champions throughout the company to be leaders in putting this as a forefront in our company and forefront in our culture. And with that, we were able to bring in leaders into the conversation, allow the voices of the employees to be heard by leaders. And we did just what Dan suggested, of like, we all got into a room and started brainstorming, what would this look like as a formalized program? What do people want to see? We sent out surveys, and we just tried different things. And one of the main things that came out of just our brainstorming and talking with our employees was our employee resource groups, and seeing how powerful they can be in just building the culture of our company. And a lot of our employee resource groups have a social impact pillar and value to each of them and to their missions. And they're the ones that then help build the company collective culture around social impact. So it's still very new, still something that we're building, but we've definitely seen a lot of impact and a lot of development. And so we're excited to see what's in store next for us.
Thank you, Pam. And that was much more than just a reiteration. So thank you for that. And what one thing you mentioned, and I had a follow-up to, and it's related, is that you found out when you were talking to employees that a lot of giving was already happening, and that, like, we start every partnership with a new company with administering our passion assessment, this proprietary assessment to every employee. And really the goal is figuring out what people care about most and what their kind of philanthropic identity looks like today. How are they, donating, serving on a board, volunteering? And to a T, every time it seems like we then provide a passion report that kind of usually gets the C-suite energized, because it's always a surprise to the C-suite. We've never had an employee base that was less than 50% like philanthropically active when we started with them. But a lot of times leadership doesn't kind of maybe realize that or put two and two together. And so being able to really understand, hey, most of your employees are doing something in their community today. And if they're spending, especially now, most of their time at work, maybe let's figure out some strategies and ways for them to bring, those causes they care about to the office with them. And part of that, to get to the follow-up on getting that executive buy-in and leadership, your CEO has been amazing in terms of a champion of all the programs that and the work that you've been doing here. And so I'd be curious, was it just that your CEO is amazing and awesome? And if so, perfectly good answer. Or given how important that buy-in from leadership is to get a lot of these programs started, but also to make them not reactive, but proactive, not, a program, but a practice, a part of culture. Was there challenges when you were trying to get leadership's buy-in, or questions they asked, or things you needed to bring to the table to get the thumbs up?
Yeah, I would say our CEO is pretty awesome. She is very open and really does value what the employees think, and wants to make sure that where we're working really is impactful to our employees. So that was really great. But I think in terms of really making it part of a wider company priority and putting it part of our goals was something that we had to really advocate for. She was open to it, but she did want to see like the data, wanted to see like where were we all getting these ideas from. So I think the impact surveys definitely helped. We sent out surveys, understanding people's sentiment around how important social impact was to them. So I think there was that data collection process, and being able to then take all of these things that we had been observing and hearing and putting it into like somewhat of a business case and somewhat of a proposal to say like, hey, like, this percentage of our employees think that social impact is important to them and to their jobs. And even external, like industry-wide information and research out there about the impact of social impact within a company's culture and performance is available, and how that really does help drive employee engagement, that in turn drives company performance. So there was a lot of information out there. So being able to just pull that in together and present it to our leadership and our CEO just kind of reinforced the importance of it. And now, like for our quarterly reviews, she goes through all of the metrics of the company, but then also goes through the metrics of like social impact and the different initiatives that we've done throughout the company. So yeah, it wasn't too much of an uphill battle, but then there was still like definitely some work to do, to get it in there to the level that we wanted to on a company-wide surface.
Yeah, and it seems like you maybe even, it happened before this conversation, but you took Dan's advice on kind of treating it like a product, is almost, going there and say, hey, here's the market research. The market is our workforce, all of our people, and there's demand for this. And, these are our hypotheses. These are the inputs we're going to put into this, and this is what we think the outputs are going to be. And so that it is that maybe people so often think of it, or culture programs, as like just kind of the moral, the squishy, the we should do it just because we should do it, but having that data-driven approach and pairing, we should do it because it's good for the business and good for our people, actually gets these programs built and making the impact that they're designed to. That's awesome. Thank you. Prince, I think you were going to dive into some Q&A and just get some more questions answered from our experts here.
For sure. So if you can, feel free to just ask any questions within the chat, and we're going to throw them out to the panelists. But I kind of want to start with a very simple question, because everyone has a different idea or perspective on what culture is. So Dan, what does culture mean to you?
How we do things around here. Real simple. Yes, there are very complicated ways of defining what a culture is, how people behave, their thoughts and beliefs, and what the organization stands to believe in. You can make it really complex, but its most core, it's how we do things around here. Maybe it's the unwritten tribal rules of what is right, what is wrong, which kind of has this weird ethical overtones of what's allowed at this organization, what's not. But it could also be, you come in, you talk to this person's really nice, you get invited to this event, you go to the event, you really like it. That's all culture too, because that's how we do things around here.
Hey, all right, Lori, you're up.
Dan stole the words right out of my mouth. I echo Dan completely. I think it's the leadership, it's the values, the traditions, the interactions, the attitudes that people have towards each other, how they treat each other. Are they comfortable authentically showing up as themselves? And then through all of that, I think that defines the culture. And that's why I think it's so critical to align your social impact work to the core values, because core values and the mission of the organization is integral to the company culture.
Yes. Dan, you're going to have to get some merchandise with that quote. How we do things around here. Get a t-shirt. Pam, you're on.
Yeah, both just adding on to what Dan and Lori said, really how we do things translates into what your values are, and really how you do things is based on what you value, and it's very much intertwined and informs one another. And then on a larger scale to that, it then shows what your identity is, who are you as a company based on your culture and your values, and that's what people will really recognize and what will really set you apart, not just a value, not just an identity mission statement, but actually through the actions and through the output of your company, which is your culture essentially.
All right, Joel, did you have some questions for us?
We have got one from Dylan Lyons. Thank you, Dylan, for the question. It's quite a good one. So it is, what's the biggest challenges, obstacles you've run up against when trying to launch these social impact initiatives, and how did you overcome it? So Lori, maybe I can start with you. What were the biggest speed bumps you ran into, and how'd you truck over them?
Yeah, so I will say that when I came to Alteryx, they already had a social impact organization and something in place. However, I feel like there's always challenges to overcome within this space. One of the challenges, as I mentioned, we had a huge shift in leadership. So with that CEO change, the new CEO came in and was super supportive of these initiatives, but just didn't know how to vocalize his support. And so a lot of the struggles that we had early on was being a little upset and a little disappointed in some of our all hands around, the way he talked about social impact or the way he talked about DEI. And so one of the ways that we overcame that hurdle is we ended up scheduling a monthly meeting with our CEO, with all of our employee resource group leaders. So that showed, one, his commitment. He acknowledges that he's not the expert in this area, but he's also showing his support and saying, I want to do better. I want to show my support to you all. And then it also gave our employees and our employee resource group leaders a chance to vocalize some of the issues that they're hearing on the ground level, and have a really important conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion and our social impact work. And so with all of that, I would just say one of our biggest hurdles was not necessarily getting our CEO on board, but getting him to truly understand what social impact is and what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, and getting him and educating him on how to translate that to the executive staff and the board and the rest of the organization.
That was probably quite a bit, but it worked. So you did it quite successfully. Dan, how about you? You've got a pretty big sample size in terms of working with many different companies. What are some of the challenges that you hear across the community that you serve?
So, one of the things I tend to see is that the people who are most motivated to make social impact happen are inspired. They have a vision. They're motivated. They've had the experience, and they almost they assume that other people might have that mindset too. And what I find is that these highly motivated, passionate people kind of leave people behind and don't spend the time to really bring them into their story, give them the experience, help them really connect that individual who, it might be the CEO, it might be your operations associate who has to organize it might be whomever, including them and really helping, making sure they're up to a place where they understand why social impact, why are we doing this? What does it mean to you? How does it work? And I think it's more of it's a disconnect between the strategy and the vision and the tactics of making the thing happen. And if, the most inspired person is driving the ship and just assume that everyone understands the strategy, then when the people actually have to do the thing or show up to the event, they don't have that same vision. And so that's an important connection that needs to happen. And Lori just explained it. You got to find a way to get the people to see the vision too. And whether that's exposing them to those perspectives, people's energy is going to flow where their attention goes. So if you give them the opportunity to spend their attention on understanding the bigger picture, then they're more likely to kind of follow through and actually get what you hope for them to get out of it.
You all have been such a treat. And Dylan agrees. See, look at that. I'm so grateful that each of you had time today to sit here and share these wonderful and inspiring tidbits and golden nuggets, I call them. While our webinars are almost always spotlighting the great social impact work that we're seeing across all the tech companies in our community, I'm just so grateful right now that you were able to join us and share this information. I want to thank all the attendees for joining as well. I want to make sure that to mention Percent Pledge works closely with culture-focused companies like Betterment to help build or enhance social impact programs. So whether it's helping with an easier way to manage employee donating or employers matching or organizing engaging volunteer events, we are the social impact experts and we're here to help. So be on the lookout for a recording after this webinar, paired with an actionable resource you can share with your team. If you feel free to reach out if you're interested in learning more about what we do, and also keep your ear to keep your ear to the phone or your eye on the dial. I forgot that saying, but keep a lookout for our next webinar, which focuses on how to build ERG groups from scratch. So one last thank you before we all head out, but thank you. Joel, do you have anything to add?
No, you've covered it all. Thank you again to everyone. This was, I feel like I'm gassed up right now. I'm just very energized from this conversation. So it's going to be a great rest of the day.
Yes. Ending on a high note, y'all have a wonderful, wonderful evening and a bomb weekend. So I'll see y'all soon. Thank you again and ciao.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.